My name is Cyril Yako. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tanzania Association of Tour Operators. I think important tourism markets for Tanzania. That in a way is interesting question, because our numbers are actually reflecting a different perspective depending on who is the consumer. When you look at the numbers actually for tourism per se, we actually have most African countries on top of the number. We're talking of Kenya, actually the leading. And of course this is pre-COVID. I'm talking of pre-COVID times. I'm not talking on COVID times. That's a very important thing to note. And of course countries like Burundi, but there are also important European countries actually, and these are actually the key source markets which are actually given the coming year specifically for our tourism products, tourism consumption, because tourism, given its definition, actually our key source markets are actually African countries. But as far as our industry intricacies are concerned, actually most of our markets or our key sources are actually America, Europe, mainly some European countries. And to be very specific, of course, I'll check some statistics here, but I see you can see the countries like UK, Italy, German, France, and then also USA is leading, actually has the biggest number as of 2019, Canada, Poland, and some Scandinavian countries. These are actually the key source markets which have been responding to the products which we have for years and actually paying top dollar. The COVID impact actually, I think, was felt most in tourism sector, because tourism sector is the people sector, is the travel sector, is relatively luxury sector, because people always, when it comes to priorities, people are cutting luxuries against other priorities. So when COVID hit the industry or hit the world, first of all, the borders were closed, airlines couldn't fly. That means for the destination like ours, which is actually mainly depending on long-haul tourists, even those who were willing to travel here, we are unable to travel. So practically, we were literally almost shut down for long-haul tourists. So our government actually takes very bold steps, including at least weighing out options, weighing for a while. If you know, we were weighing what is exactly really happening from the other part of the world before taking any serious decision. So we think that the fact that government, at the then government actually decided not to close our country, that was actually one of the best decisions, which I think have kept our people and ourselves free. And that's also in a way has kept us in world map actually, because for the first time it has triggered the destinations, other destinations which were not leading by them to be visiting East African countries, especially our country. So I think the government has done a lot from as far as people are concerned, people's welfare are concerned, but most importantly, tourism sector now, the government has actually worked hand in hand with private sector to develop a standard operating procedure for the industry, to train, and also at one point actually we realized that there is a good traffic of tourists, but mainly not coming to the mainland, not coming to most of our members. And then we actually approached and we enjoyed generous support from the government and UNDP to develop a COVID sample collection centers in our national parks. And actually, interestingly, that in a way unlocked some numbers of tourists. I can't give you exact statistics, but no doubt after those numbers, actually after those COVID sample collection centers, which were generously supported by UNDP, which we are stationed in Seronera, that's Central Serengeti, Northern Serengeti, and the other one most recently in Rutu area. Actually, it has unlocked some numbers, and we think if you combine all that one with a lot of other initiatives in place, I think that was really the big deal. And in a way, some companies started to get back to life because of that. Because actually, to be more precise, we have worked with stakeholders, including government, to put end-to-end system to support the tourist in case. We have put ambulances in ground, we have put tented camps like hospitals or accommodation in case someone will need temporary rest. We have also put sample collection centers, and we had an agreement with these domestic charters, domestic airlines, this to get at least in case someone had a problem, then can be airlifted against the insurance, whether to Johannesburg, to Nairobi, or to wherever of the choice. So that gives a very serious confidence or assurance to the tourist that these people are serious and we are willing to. It's like we were over prepared anyway. That's the feeling. I think we really responded in the best way we could that particular moment.
If you see the Eastern European markets
actually responded more resiliently at that particular moment when we had this. So I think that is like, it's like, okay, there are markets which are more resilient actually. And I think that is like, is a new, I can say that's is a new experience altogether. That's what I can say. And also on health infrastructure, now it's the first time we have noted that actually the real person in command is actually the Ministry of Health. It's actually the Ministry of Health deciding who should come in and should not come. And also, interestingly, for the other part of the world. So it's like we have really started to see. That's, I think, it's a new perspective. It's not about that actually, about tax cuts, about incentives, about this. You know, it's like the way business is structured. Taxes are structured in such a way. When you make money, that's where taxman comes. When you have no money, it means no taxes. So that was more straightforward thing. I think the most challenging moments actually is we have tasted some of the laws actually for the first time. Especially we have observed from our members actually labor laws were very challenging at that moment. It's very interesting that we didn't know that even if the company has a crisis, actually the labor laws are very complicated. Even on consensus agreements, because the people can come together and say, okay, we don't want to be retrenched, we are willing to stay in the company, but the laws don't allow that. Somebody has to be retrenched, and then that means you cannot get your health insurance, etc. It's very complicated. There are companies which we are willing to go to the bank and pay for the health insurance of their staff, regardless of whether they are still at the office or at home, but it's impossible. So I think this pandemic has given us like, where are the loose laws? What can we do? And it's like this has tested. It's like this is really a litmus test. I think we will have a lot after recovery to discuss and rework on our. We have to get back to drawing board for some of the laws, I think. Tourism industry is the industry which is leading in youth and women employment. That should be very clear in the beginning. So practically means any efforts which are done in the company are automatically in furtherance of supporting women and youth. Yes. So the efforts which managing directors of the companies or the owners have done actually was meant to support the businesses to get back. But it was really challenging moments. I don't think if we had ever seen something like that. As Tanzania in particular, we actually, I think the country with a lot bordered by 8 countries. That means we are enjoying the neighborhood relationship than any other country in a way. So that practically means we also have big traffic. As in the beginning of my interview, I told you that one of our key source market is Kenya, and vice versa. If you look at our statistics, and the Burundi, those are the countries which actually we have a lot of interactions with. But all the 8 countries, if you look at Zambia, we received almost as 2019 with over 30,000 Zambians crossed. South Africa, if you look at, of course, that's air as well, air connection. So, in a way, as far as regional tourism is concerned, I think a lot remains to be done, as much as also there are lots also to be celebrated as well. The most important part for me is to relook into the regional health infrastructure. To me, I think that's the most important thing, because at a point we knew that even there was no possibility of flying someone out of the country. So we have to have at least top-notch hospitals in the country. I think that's something which we need to start to look at. So general health infrastructure to support citizens and tourists to the best possible global available standards. I think that's the most important thing, and the focus should be as such. And I think now, in a way, this pandemic has challenged us to think and to put business people who are employing people in forefront of our policies. Yeah, that's also a very interesting question, but I will give you two perspectives. The perspective number one, wildlife conservation in our countries is mainly funded from tourism money. The conservation is funded from tourism money. So practically it means if no tourism, then no conservation funds. That means a lot of good people of goodwill have to come in place, and the government, and then they have to source funds to support conservation. But the other interesting part is also because there were no tourism, also nature had a moment to regenerate. And there are lots of wildlife now freely roaming by that time. We even remember we had an heads of elephants coming around Arusha town at a point. I think, so in a way, it's like nature started to take its own shape. So, and also the other note worth mentioning is also because there are no, most of the lodges in the parks were closed, tour operators were not taking the vehicles there. That means also the government officials or rangers, park rangers, we are unable to patrol the entire parks by themselves. That means private sector have literally taken off part of its own unnoticed patrolling of the parks. That means also in a way some poachers have taken the reign in the bush. You understand what I mean? Mm. So that is also another way of another impact which I think was well noted. As Association of Tour Operators, we have really pushed and worked with government to dispense a lot of vaccines around, including in our own office. Actually, up to recent, we have dispensed thousands of vaccines here, right in that office. Actually, up to last week, we were still giving vaccinations in this office as well. So we have done massive campaign to support the government on that, and indeed we are grateful that our government taken enough time to study which vaccine should it go for. So I think that is also something which we commend the government to have taken such a serious time and a decision. So we think that as the region, actually, as the EAC, I think it's very important at the end of the day to have vaccinations being developed within our own region for our own people. Because if other countries are developing for their own people, why are we waiting for other people while we have right here our own scientists, we have our own laboratories? I think it's high time EAC in our countries start to invest on that, because the fact that we are going out to buy vaccines from other countries which are giving you surplus after they have vaccinated their people, or they're giving you out of humanitarian spirit, I think we are in a way challenged, and I think that's a very serious challenge. We have to relook into that. I think we have to pay our scientists well, we have to establish our own laboratories and do something for our own people, even if it's meant only for EAC to come as a block. If we can have a joint military operations, why not having a joint scientific laboratories to produce vaccines for our people. I think that is also something we need to look at in the long run. I thank you actually at this particular moment. I wish you guys the very best.